Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
Once again, welcome back to America's Workforce, recorded in Cleveland, Ohio, for workers all across America, coast to coast. You can listen to the show, any show we do, wherever you stream podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Just some examples there. And once you get hooked on the show, which I know you'll do, subscribe to our podcast and give us a rating. We would certainly appreciate that. All right. We appreciate Pete Ielmini. He is joining us from New Jersey. Or is it Jersey? Is it Jersey, Pete? How do we say that over there on the East Coast?
Well, I say Jersey, but there is a slang out here, and it said Joyzy.
Joyzy. Okay. Joyzy. Pete's with the Mechanical Insulators, and he's been with the organization for 36 years, and he knows everything there is to know about insulation. And today we're going to get into fire stopping and smoke sealing, and also infectious disease containment. Before we do that, though, I have to ask you, how are we faring over there on the East Coast? Getting back to work, being safe? Maybe you can give us some details on that, Pete.
Sure, I would love to. Yep, things are starting to improve here. The governments of New York and New Jersey and Connecticut and Pennsylvania have started to release some restrictions just in time for summer. But the good news is that the numbers of the coronavirus have substantially decreased. So things are starting to open up here. We're not fully back yet, but things are in partial operation and starting to be able to eat out at restaurants, outside only. Activity is starting to increase, and we're starting to get back to some of our summertime traditions, and we're feeling good, getting back to some sort of normalcy. And most importantly, work is picking up as well, and that's getting back to where it should be. We've got a long way to go yet, but work is picking up as well. So things are looking good. Good.
What about the training programs, apprenticeship programs? I know across the board the trades are hurting for workers. What's the situation over there on the East Coast?
Well, the training programs have been put on hold as far as the in-person training, but most of the country, most professions, we're finding out ways how to increase our internet capabilities and provide training, necessary training, online with combinations of various software programs. But we're able to do a lot of the necessary training virtually, which keeps the worker skills up and be able to have them apply the materials and work in a safe manner with all the proper credentials.
Good.
My apprenticeship training real soon.
Good. Okay, Pete. Well, part of the mechanical insulation industry is a technology called fire stop and smoke seal. And I want to get into that today. We kind of touched on this last month. I want you to explain to our listeners what this is all about and why buildings need firewalls. And I played a little snippet of the video on your website. It gave me chills. I realize, I've seen fires over the years, and you always hear stories about how quickly they spread. And when you see that video, it'll take your breath away. It really will take your breath away. But this could be stopped. That's what this is all about. So explain what's at play here, Pete.
Sure. It does give you chills. And I wish more people had the opportunity to look at a building, walk through a building after it's been engulfed in flames and fire. And you'll have the professionals be able to show how fire migrates from one part of the building to the next, whether it be in a horizontal case or even going vertical up through the floors in a situation where you have multiple stories. Buildings are designed to what they call have containment and partitions. And if you have a multiple room building and for some reason you have a fire in that room, and there's other precautions to prevent that from happening. But nevertheless, if there's a fire in a particular room, if that fire can be contained in that room, obviously you'll minimize the damage and minimize death tremendously. If it stays in that room, it can be easily handled, taken care of, and it won't migrate throughout the rest of the building. Buildings are designed and have been designed for the last 40 years, 50 years, with what they call fire-rated walls, where there are specifications, depending upon the square footage, that walls are constructed that will not permit fire and flame and smoke to penetrate through those walls. Commonly known, we know it all today, as sheetrock. Sheetrock is one of the biggest fire barriers that we have, and there is minimum thicknesses that are required. And walls are rated either 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 or 4 hours fire rating. In other words, if there's a raging fire, flame will not penetrate through that wall for those required amount of hours.
Sure.
There is a problem, though, with fire-rated walls, is that if there's a penetration through that wall, in other words, a pipe goes through it for plumbing, if a duct goes through it, or you have electrical cables, you may have telecommunication trays that go through a wall. That's called penetrations. Now, you may not see those penetrations. It may be up high above the drop ceiling, and it's hidden for aesthetic value. But when there is a fire, you'll have fire and smoke going through those penetrations. So now you have your fire-rated wall, and 98% of it will stop the smoke and flame from going through it. But that 2% does offer a weakness to the point where fire and smoke will go through that wall, regardless of the percentage. Unless a fire-rated wall is 100% sealed, it's not going to work to prevent the spread of flame and smoke. And it's not just penetrations. You could have wall joints. You could have the joints between the floor and the wall. Buildings are designed with seismic capability. In other words, the building's going to vibrate. It always vibrates. It may vibrate more in other parts of the country, but the structure has to be allowed to absorb that vibration. So there are joints that are made to move, but fire stop products have to be put in there to be able to stop the spread of fire. What we do as mechanical insulators, and it's one of our specialties that we do, anytime there is a penetration in a fire-rated wall, or there is a joint that has to be sealed up, we put in special products that are designed to stop the spread of fire and smoke. And it's very technical. It's highly regulated. The materials are extremely expensive. And the materials can be bought, but unless they're installed properly, it will not work properly. And unfortunately, the only way that's going to be known if it works properly is that when there is a fire.
Gotcha.
So we need highly trained people to install the fire stop products to the tested and approved method of installation. And then it should be inspected as well.
So, Pete, you talk about the cost on this. My concern moving forward here, is this an issue when they're doing new construction, saying, well, wait a minute, we can't afford that kind of thing? I'm just wondering about that. And I guess this is a two-part question. What about the codes here? Inspectors or maybe governments, couldn't they mandate these sealed joints that you're talking about? What's your response?
Yes. It is part of the building codes. It's part of several codes. The actual penetrations falls under several different codes. For example, if you have electrical lines going through a wall, it would fall under the electrical codes. If you have plumbing lines going through the fire-rated wall, it falls under the plumbing codes. There are some standalone fire codes that address it, but it is one of the problems of the industry is who is actually collecting all of the information about the integrity of the fire-rated walls, and is it all of the inspections being done properly? in a timely basis. And it isn't just new construction that has to be concerned about. It is also in existing buildings. Mm-hmm. Anytime there's any type of renovation, anytime that wall is penetrated through that barrier, through that sheetrock, could be an addition, could be a light switch, it could be just a simple hole that goes through for a telecommunication cable. It could be putting in a window. Anytime a fire-rated wall breaks its integrity, then there's a need for the FireStop product to be put in there, and many times that they are not.
I see.
Building inspection is a challenge, and it's not just for fire stopping, but period.
Sure. I'm just wondering, Pete, is there any data on this? How many buildings are being done correctly in America today? Do we have any research to give us some answers to that?
I'm still research on that. I don't have that at my fingertips. We do have a division within our international that is in the legislative branch that we're trying to beef up the inspection process and the integrity of the inspection process. And we have very good inspectors, fire marshals throughout this country, but there is a concern that do the inspectors fully understand the FireStop technology? And
right.
As our unions train workers to install it, we also offer training for any fire marshal or fire inspector to increase their knowledge. Hopefully we can enhance their knowledge and teach them about the FireStop technology and science. So when they are looking at these FireStop systems that are installed, they are actually looking and understanding what they are examining. It's kind of hard to look at a FireStop system to see if it's installed properly. And the proper way of inspecting it is after it's installed, is to take it apart to make sure that the installer installed it correctly. Now, usually, it's almost like an oxymoron when you say you got to take it apart, but you may have a pipe going through a fire-rated wall, and you may have that type of penetration hundreds of times throughout the building, the same type of scenario. But randomly, if you check 4 or 5 of them and you take apart the FireStop system to make sure that it was installed properly, you can be rest assured if 5 out of 100 were done properly, it's a good chance that the rest of the building is done properly as well. Now, if some of those are missing or done improperly, well, then they have the authority to say, redo all of them and redo them correctly.
Gotcha. You mentioned the training for like fire marshals and inspectors. Are they taking advantage of what you're doing on the union front?
Many have, sure. Many of the larger cities we offer for free FireStop training, FireStop awareness for the inspectors, so they know exactly what they're looking for. We feel that it's important. Is as important as it can be. We need we train our workers to be the best in the country performing this work, and we want to be able to make sure that the people judging that work overall are qualified. We have nothing to hide with what we do, but we do feel a responsibility of others putting the materials in incorrectly.
You're saving lives. That's what you're doing. Pete, I got to take a break. Pete Ielmini on behalf of the Heat and Frost Insulators, insulators.org. You want to get some more information, do check out that video on fire stopping. We'll continue the conversation with Pete. In fact, this same technology can be used for infectious disease control. We'll talk about that next. Later in the show, Sharon Johnson will be joining us from the Progressive Magazine, talking about community health centers and how they're faring in the middle of a pandemic. It's all part of America's Workforce. Back in a few minutes.
This is America's Workforce. Now, back to Ed Flash Ferens with America's Workforce.
Welcome back to America's Workforce, recorded in Cleveland, Ohio, for workers across America. You can listen to the show, any show we do, wherever you stream podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, still online at awfradio.com. Let's go back to our live line and continue our conversation with Pete Ielmini on behalf of the Heat and Frost Insulators. Insulators.org. We're talking about fire stopping, smoke sealing, and the technology that's available. And I want to talk about, obviously, we're in the middle of a pandemic, Pete. This technology, from what I'm reading, can be utilized for infectious disease control. And I'm thinking, boy, how many people are being treated in hospitals today? This is a no-brainer. Can you explain this? Because this is a life and death situation here. What's at play?
This type of technology or need for technology has developed in the last 10 years. We talked about how fire-rated walls are designed to stop fires and smoke, but it was determined that in a medical facility, hospital, even a clinic, the walls are designed, obviously, as partitions, and not necessarily fire-rated walls, but we anticipate these partitions is keeping bad stuff in that room, if you will, keeping it from migrating into secure sanitary areas. We think about emergency rooms. Emergency rooms or operating rooms have to be sterilized, and you don't want to have bacteria migrate in or viruses that lead to infection. And in the medical field, this is extremely important. But what was discovered is that there's penetrations similar to fire stopping that are compromising the walls and the containment of airborne diseases, viruses, and bacteria. So through this similar technology of fire stopping, the materials are very similar. We have contractors that are being employed and employing our members to install fire stop products that are a little bit different as far as what they're doing. Instead of stopping smoke and fire, although it will do that, it'll also stop the migration of airborne bacteria and viruses.
Mm-hmm.
This has had a heightened effect with the pandemic that we're involved in with the coronavirus or COVID-19. And it has brought some awareness to this type of technology that has to be installed in our medical facilities. And I'm not a medical expert by no means, and I'm like everybody else. I'm learning about this virus as we hear reports on the media. And I do not believe that the coronavirus is something that's airborne, and that's something that has to be immediately addressed and concerned with this particular virus of COVID-19. However, it does bring the awareness to all of us is that in the future, there may be other viruses that are airborne and that would have that concern. And this is something that medical facilities, whether they're going to be built or the ones that are in existence, should look at. When someone is in a room in a hospital, you think that what's in that room stays in that room, and it should. And medical facilities should be looking at the fact of containing infectious disease through the wall penetrations.
Sure. Now, are hospitals calling on the insulators right now to address this situation? I know budgets are a concern. Hospitals have been losing money. Perhaps the government, any dialogue going on right now to address this issue?
Sure there is. And the dialogue is not moving fast enough than what should be to protect the actual people who work in these hospitals or the patients. Unfortunately, anybody can buy the material and install it. And what's a shame is not everyone is installing the materials correctly. And again, much like a fire, you're not going to really know how effective it is until after the fact, until either fire passes through it, or you have some sort of infectious disease that passed through it. And like I said, when you look at the amount of hospitals that we used, and they were set up to be able to hold corona victims and people that had the virus, you can only imagine what it would be like if we ever have to deal with a virus on a pandemic level that it traveled through the air or was airborne. It would be a lot different than what we've seen recently.
Yeah. Once again, we're talking about the union difference here because you indicated the products are available, but if they're not installed properly, they're worthless. It's a waste of money. Is that pretty much what I'm hearing from you, Pete?
You put it very simply, and you nailed it right on the head. And
there you go.
It's hard for the industry to control it when there are so many people that think they're doing good, and budgetary concerns are always on the front. How can we have this at a cheaper price?
Yeah.
And to me, it's frustrating because you're playing with people's lives. And
bottom line, yeah.
Bottom line. And when it comes to safety and health, you should have the best systems installed. And to have the best systems installed, you have to have the best qualified, trained people doing it.
All right, Pete, I'm going to leave it on that note. You can get more information on fire stop and infectious disease containment by going to this website, firestoplmct.com, firestoplmct.com. I'll tell you, you know what? Like I said at the beginning of this interview, it was chilling to watch this video, and it was a learning experience just talking to you about this. Let's revisit this topic down the road. We're in the middle of this pandemic. God knows what's going to happen come fall or winter time. We're hoping for that vaccine. We're hoping that the virus can be contained. But we have to be smart about this, and obviously the folks at the Insulators, the heat and frost insulators, are on the right side of the fence. They're doing the right thing on this. We just got to get that word out. We got to get a lot of people educated on this, and that's what this show is all about. So, Pete, my hat's off to you. Keep talking about us, and we'll make sure that this gets a lot of play on our podcast here, okay?
Will do. Thank you very much again.
You got it. Pete Ielmini on behalf of the Heat and Frost Insulators. Insulators.org, that's the general website if you want to check out that video. Again, more on fire stop and infectious disease containment. Just go to firestoplmct.com.